Hello, what's going on everyone? I'm Alistair Bullock and I'm back with another weekly catch-up of all the latest news. I love doing these sorts of shows and you can tell it's going to be a busy news week when there's been a car show on. Of course, this week the car show has been the GoodWood Festival of Speed. So I'm going to quickly run through all the new cars that have come out or that are the first UK debuts or anything like that. I have got a big list here because it is quite long, and then we'll jump into a couple of my favorites and other news from the weekend. So let's try and get into this. I'll try not to fluff up too many of these names. Di Tommaso P72, I will get more into this in a little while because it is fascinating. The Ford GT Mark II, they're coming out with a track focused only 1.6 million or poundies or dollar car. The Jaguar XE Project 8 Touring, basically the Jaguar XE Project 8 but without a big wing. The Land Rover Defender, I'll go into more detail with that. The Lexus LC convertible, does what it says on the tin. VW T-Roc R, does what it says on the tin. Ferrari P80C, that's a one-off Ferrari weird concept car, but not a concept car. The Audi R8 LMS GT2. The Charge Automotive Mustang, an electric vehicle 60s Mustang. They're making just a small number of these, but they look awesome. The Odyssey 21, which is a off-road electric racer from the guy who started the Formula E championship. The Porsche 935, don't know what that is. It's basically a modern version of an older Porsche. Looks quite cool. The Ford Puma, a disgusting looking crossover, which has ruined the name of the Puma. Polestar 2, Polestar being the EV version of the Volvos, but not really being Volvos at the same time. This is their second car and it's a crossover. Cayman GT4, that's what it says on the tin, just a new version of it. The Mercedes AMG A45S, again, new version of the old car. Lotus Evora GT4, again, same but new. The BAC Mono R, it's a lighter, faster version of a Mono R, and as far as I'm aware, they've already sold out of all ones that they plan on making. The Preto Orange, I think that's how you say it, could be completely wrong, but a supercar out of France with around 800 odd, 900 odd brake horsepower. BMW X6, a new X6. Audi S8, again a new S8 with a hybrid engine, I think this time. The Supra GT4, Toyota will now sell you a Supra that you can race around the world. I'm wondering if it's based off of how they did with their car on the Nürburgring 24 Hours. I'm wondering if, because Mr. Toyota was driving it, the CEO of Toyota, I wonder if that was more of a test mule to see how it could get on and if people were interested in a GT4 version of the Supra. The Porsche 991.2 RSR, so the old 911 RSR, of course, winning the WEC Super Season. This one is a new version of that with slightly modified aerodynamics, side exit exhausts, and as far as I'm aware, it doesn't run turbochargers. New Mini Cooper JCW, John Cooper Works. Bentley Continental Flying Spur, just a new version of the old one. And finally, the Porsche Taycan, the first time this has been seen running up the hill. And as far as I'm aware, it's the global kind of debut of it running before it gets fully released without any camo on in Frankfurt later in the year. So there you go, a really quick roundup of all the latest cars that have come out this week, not necessarily at Goodwood, but in the past week. So let's pick one of those cars and rewind back to Thursday of the first day for the Festival of Speed, and that is when Di Tommaso, famed of course for making the Pantera, the brilliant car that kind of looks a little bit like a Diablo, they brought out a new car. This new car being the P72, which is kind of a old school homage to the prototypes that Di Tommaso first started making, being the P70, which is a really old car. No. So not many people have heard of the P70, and to be fair, even the people that had purchased the Di Tommaso brand when it was liquidated, they didn't even know about it when they first bought the company. After researching and developing and looking into the history of the company, they only then finally realized that there was this small part of the Di Tommaso history that was in these kind of prototypes. Now, the designer of this car, Jo-Win Wong, he also designs the Apollo IE, brilliant looking car, but he wanted to kind of bring the old school styles of the P70 and the other prototypes that they kind of designed and manufactured through the years in the very old days of when Di Tommaso first started. He really wanted to bring that design language through, and I think he's done a brilliant job of that. I honestly think it's one of the best looking cars that have come out for a very long time. It reminds me a lot of one of my favorite Ferraris, which is the P4, and I think they've done a good job at kind of having a homage to that Italian styling back in the late 60s, I want to say, so late 60s, 70s era. Because this is the first time we've seen the car, there is not a lot of information about it. Of course, one of the big factors that everyone's shouting about is the fact that it does have a manual gearbox. Unfortunately, at the moment, that's kind of all we know. Moving on from the Di Tommaso, another car which I'm very much looking forward to is the new Land Rover Defender. Land Rover said they will be bringing out a 90, a 110 and a 130, much like the original. However, these numbers no longer coincide with the length of the wheelbase. Land Rover also released what engines they will be putting into these vehicles. You've got, of course, petrol and diesel with plug-in hybrid versions. In the diesel range, you've got the diesel 200, diesel 240 and the diesel 300, of course, all represent the numbers, all representing how much brake horsepower there will be. And the petrol engines, you've got a P300, a P400 and a P400e, and that was the plug-in hybrid version. Finally, the last thing that caught my eye this week is the new release of the Audi R8 LMS GT2. With the GT series of racing looking for a bit of a shake-up in the coming years, this is kind of the perfect time to release the GT2, with the GT3 of their R8 LMS being very professional and more for kind of established racing teams or factory teams themselves like Audi. The GT2 is for more of the kind of the gentleman or lady drivers or racers that want to get into the world of racing but don't have the money to afford a GT3. What is confusing though is that the GT2 range will sit between the GT3 and the GT4 category. Apart from that kind of confusion in the naming structure, the main differences the GT2 class will have over the GT4 and the GT2 3 class, God, I'm confusing myself already, is that the GT4 class, nope, the GT2 class, so the GT2 class will be lighter than the GT4 class by 100 kilograms and will have more brake horsepower than the GT3 class by 140 brake horsepower. Now, of course, this doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, but thanks to the weight, the gearbox and aero, Audi have said that actually, even though the GT2 car will have a higher top speed due to the more brake horsepower, round a track, the GT3 car will actually be faster. Moving on from new releases now, of course, the main event at Goodwood is the hill climb. And there's a little bit of confusion about a new record that may have been broken. I say may because, as some of you might have seen, Richard Dumas, who was piloting the VW I.D R, did manage to go up the hill faster than the long-standing record by Nick Heidfeld. So Richard Dumas managed to get the VW I.D R up the hill in just 39.9 seconds, compared to Nick Heidfeld's very slow 41.6 seconds. Nick's record has stood for 20 years now, and only now has the VW I.D R managed to go up the hill faster. Unfortunately, the times are only official from Sunday. So yes, Richard Dumas did manage to beat Nick Heidfeld's time, but no, he did not get the record of the Goodwood hill climb. That still stands with Nick Heidfeld for another year. So what time did Richard Dumas cross the line on Sunday? He crossed the line in 42.32 seconds. So why was his time 2 seconds or 3 seconds slower on Sunday compared to Saturday? Unfortunately, it rained most of the morning down at Goodwood and it had managed to dry the track by the time the timed runs were taking place, but unfortunately Richard Dumas had chosen his tyres. He was on wet tyres and not on slicks. So then we have it another year and a record that still stands. Next year will be 21 years that record has stood of the Goodwood hill climb. Richard Dumas says he's looking forward to coming back next year and hopefully the weather stays dry enough for him to be able to put some slicks on and smash that record to pieces. So there we have it, a crazy week of news thanks to Goodwood, of course. Do let me know in the comment section down below what you have liked and maybe what you haven't liked. I'd be interested to see what your viewpoints are. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe because I'll be back again this time next week with more news. So until then, see you later.